This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Super J Cast. I'm Damon, of course. Joel is still away on holiday, living the life right now, somewhere probably enjoying according to his Instagram, like a cider, or he's been doing a lot of berry picking with the kids. He's away for a month. Well, now it's going to be about, 10 days, I think, maybe, if that. So, listen, the pro wrestling talk doesn't stop. That's why you're here. And I think we have ourselves one of the best guests ever here on the Super J Cast. I had to put out the Super J Cast bat signal. I don't know what that means, but I sent it out. And lo and behold, we have someone who I'm thrilled to talk with, because I don't think we've ever chatted before, but you know her as a world traveler, according to her Twitter bio. You can listen to her on Post Wrestling. She just got done doing a podcast on Tamatonga's, the Tamatonga Island, is it? Thomas Island?
Yep.
Unbelievable. Busy. She's on her way to Charlotte for Strong, if I'm not mistaken. Everyone, it's the great Karen Peterson. It's Peterson, right? Not Pedersen, right?
It is Peterson.
Yay! All right, I should have.
There's not enough T's for it to be Pedersen.
That's a good point. Listen, how are you?
I'm wonderful. You know, I believe this is the first proper conversation that you and I have that has not involved Twitter.
So you have talked to Joel,
okay?
Because I am not on Twitter. And I have no access to our Twitter account. I really don't.
By choice, or was that choice made for you?
I mean, here's the thing. By choice, yes, but also strongly encouraged that I do not partake in the conversing.
It is in what is the best interest for all parties involved, correct?
Absolutely. Joel has this certain thing in his brain where he's able to not only deal with trolls and nonsense, like he's able to communicate well with others, and he's kind of funny. And so, yeah, that's like you have 100% with Joel. This is the first time. So
he has a je ne sais quoi, if you will.
That's pretty good. You know what? He's gonna want a T-shirt of that. I'm not gonna lie.
I want my cut, just so we're clear.
Of the $5, sure, you can have 3.
I'll take a quarter. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's weird. One of the weirdest things that has ever happened to us is seeing someone wear our T-shirts. Like, there's probably 5 people that own one, myself included. But we were at Madison Square Garden, and someone came up wearing our and it was just like, of course, I was 8 or 9 beers in at this point, but it's just
like you do.
It's a challenge. It is a challenge.
Yes.
I've gotten much better, but it's always been a problem. Are you a drinker at all, Karen?
Oh, I am quite the one who partakes in the beverages. Nice. I like a cocktail, like a good beer. I enjoy a nice glass of wine. I do tend to lean towards the light side of not drinking heavily anymore, but I will, I'll unwind if I have to. I'll let my hair down, as it were.
So I've now have gotten to the point where every day I go to the same bar for lunch. 1, because the food is tremendous, but 2, I'm sadly up to 3, and I have a bar. I built a bar in my garage. My garage is a bar. It's a legitimate working bar. I could go in there, but the problem is it's too hot. Nobody cares about this, Karen. No one.
That's fine. But the thing is that beverages there is the satisfaction of making your own beverage at home and enjoying it at home. But when somebody else makes it for you and slides it across the bar, it just tastes different.
It does. I agree 1,000%. 1,000%. There's nothing more relaxing than putting your forearms on a nice cold bar.
Oh God, yeah.
Right? And just and going alone. I love going alone.
Same.
No one talking. Just I'm going to enjoy this beverage, maybe a couple. I'm going to watch whatever is on. I don't even care what's on TV. I'm just staring at the TV.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite things in the world. Speaking of favorite things in the world, again, I read off your Twitter bio. World traveler. What's the worst place you ever been?
Oh God. The worst place I've ever been would be when I was a flight attendant. I had just been out of training maybe a month, and I was on call on New Year's Eve, like literally 6 weeks after I had got out of graduation.
Uh-huh.
So New Year's Eve is one of the nights that a lot of people are sick all of a sudden. So
Sure.
I got sent to Georgetown in South America, and it's very, very small, very, very rustic. But the hotel that they took us to had like razor wire, like 10-foot razor wire fences around them, and a guard gate. And my colleagues and I, we all were just brand new flight attendants. We didn't know what we were doing. We had never had this layover before. And we asked the guard at the gate, we're like, well, we saw there was a market that we passed on our way in. Can we go there? Grab something to eat? They're like, eat at the hotel bar, get drunk by the pool.
Mhm.
If you leave this compound, you may not come back.
Holy
And that
shit.
was more than enough information for all of us to just like say, yes, ma'am, and go straight to the pool bar.
Yeah.
And we just spent the whole, it was like a 36-hour layover. So, like a day and a half. We just spent the whole time drinking and laying by the pool and eating and getting room service because there was nowhere we could go. And I like to explore when I travel. So that was probably what was worse about it, was one, being afraid that I was going to be kidnapped.
Right.
And two, not being in a place and I know that I can't leave, like that, like being it felt like I was in a cage. Like I just wanted to like go see something and be like, yes, I experienced this country, and I couldn't.
Oh, and where was it then? You said South America? What country?
It was Georgetown. I want to say Guyana.
Oh God, my geography stinks.
It's
I don't even know.
Excuse me. It's on the north coast of South America,
Okay.
facing the Caribbean.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
My goodness. So, I mean, was the room nice?
I mean, it was all right.
Was room service all right? Or was
Yeah,
the food good?
It was God, it was 10 years ago, or no, more than that. It was like 12 years ago. Yeah, no, I remember it being like, well, it is what it is. It tasted well enough. We got a crew discount, so can't complain too much. But yeah, that was one of the first times I could ever say like I ordered room service at a hotel. But I was just like,
Wow.
I don't order room service. I'm the kind that like I look for hotels that specifically have like a mini fridge, and I'll bring all my food, or I'll go to the local market and buy stuff.
Okay.
I'm not the room service kind of girl. I don't like people coming to my room. I like when I'm home, like in the room, I'm a slam clicker. I slam the door. I like put the little latch over it, and I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to hear any noise in the hallway.
Yes.
I just want to unwind and enjoy the hoteling experience.
Yes. I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't normally do the room service, but every once in a while, when like, especially if you go to a place where it's late,
yeah,
and you're getting in under the wire with room service, right? You're frantically looking at the menu, being like, oh, please, still yes, right? And I get like a Caesar salad and French fries, or something like that. Right? Ridiculousness. Talk to me about that flight attendant stuff. How long were you doing it? You still doing it? You stopped, right?
No, I stopped.
Okay.
I was a flight attendant for Delta Airlines from 2011 to 2014. 2015. I only did it for a few years, and I wish I was still flying, honestly. I made the stupid mistake of believing a guy who's saying that he wanted to settle down and start life with me, and then when I quit flying, he said, I liked it better when you weren't around.
Oh,
can you go back to flying? And I'm like, bro, I just quit. The year I got hired, it was harder to get hired by Delta Airlines as a flight attendant than it was to get into Harvard University. Like, I had to work very hard to get into that company.
Oh.
I can't just go back. I'm like, I wish you would have broke up with me before I quit my job.
I would have smothered them with a pillow. I got to be honest with you.
I was just like, bro, yeah. But I mean, I like my job now, but unfortunately, this job has no connection to Japan. At least when I worked with Delta, I was a language qualified flight attendant, so I could work the Japan flights.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. I spent a year living in Hawaii. It was nice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my! So you've been all over. I mean, just as a flight attendant, do you get? I mean, with your language knowledge, is that like just like an easy fit? Karen's going there, or do you pick, or how does that work?
The way that the process used to be, I don't know, I don't think it's changed much, is that you have to bid for your schedule. So basically, everything's based on seniority. So of course, the international trips are high time, high pay, best layovers, best hotels. So those typically go to the people who are most senior in the system.
Okay.
But those flights also, if it's specifically for like say Japan, they have allocated a certain number of flight attendants that are language qualified. So if you have the language qualification, you don't necessarily need to have the highest amount of seniority. So for me, it was like my very first. I was out of training 4 weeks, and my first international flight was working a 747 from JFK to Narita.
Wow.
And working in like the first class upper deck, like you know how like, the 747 had that like the little hump at the top of it. They used to call it the whale. But that was like part of their business elite section where they had like it was first class, so there was like a bunch of like lay flat beds in it. And I had never worked like I hadn't done more than like hopping and skipping up and down the East Coast, like serving peanuts and pretzels. I never had to serve like a full like 4-course dinner and work the kitchen. But luckily, like the lady I was paired with, she's like, she's like, you run the trays, I'll do all the cooking. I'm like, okay.
All right.
But yeah, from there on out, it was the probably about 6 months later, I was like, I had gotten used to like every month when they would release a schedule, I was good at trading my schedules and like dropping trips on days I didn't want and picking up trips that like would either worth more time or on better days or trade. Basically, when you could drop and add classes in college during drop and add, it's like that, but like with your work schedule.
Okay.
So it's like there's a trading board and all this other stuff, but every now and then I would pick up an extra international trip just because so I could check off places on my passport saying I've been to like XYZ place.
Right.
So I looked at the trip pool, saw that Barcelona was there, and I'm like, oh yes, I've never been to Barcelona. Let's do this. So I put in the request and I got it immediately. And I was like, all right, let's go. And then I pulled my schedule up the next day and realized I transposed the numbers. I wasn't going to Barcelona. I was going to Moscow.
Oh.
In March. I have never been so cold in my entire life.
Wow. Yeah. It was. I'm assuming winters are brutal. Yes.
It was. I live in Florida, so it was like anything would just go straight through all of my layers down to my bones. And luckily, the captain on that particular flight, he regularly worked the Moscow trip. So him and the first officer offered to take me around. So I got to go to Red Square and take a picture in front of the onion domes and all that stuff.
Yes.
And they have some of those cleanest and beautiful subways. Like they have like marble statues and like gold filigree, everything. But that was another trip where I was the most junior and they're like, oh, well, guess what? We pick positions on this flight based on seniority. You're working the first class international kitchen. I'm like, all right, well, be prepared for everything to be very slow because I've never done this before.
Right.
But luckily, the first class cabin was half full. So the purser was like, don't worry about it. We'll get it done. Just take your time. I'd rather you do things and not get burnt or hurt. So I'm like, all right, fine. And I did it. But I after that, I was very, very careful. And I always like double and triple check every single trip I picked up to make sure I was actually going to the place I was supposed to be going to.
Were you off like by like one digit?
I flip-flopped a 5 and a 0.
Are you kidding me? And
so it was supposed to be like 005 and I put 050.
Oh my God.
I was wondering why that trip had gone to me so quickly because nobody wanted to go to Moscow in the middle of March.
But I guarantee you that no one listening to the show, I can't say no one, but you could probably count them on one hand how many people have been to Moscow. Like that had to be, I mean, at the very least, very cool, somewhat life-changing.
Yeah, I mean, it was the thing that made me laugh the most is that the running joke is on international flights, the pilots will inevitably, regardless of whatever city you're in, it doesn't matter if it's Japan or Asia or Europe or South America, the pilots will inevitably end up in the one British pub in the area.
All right.
And sure enough, after we did all the sightseeing, we ended up in a British pub near the layover hotel.
I know it. I know there's a place in Shibuya. But we always go. It is a British pub.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's one by the dome too, the hub.
Yeah, the hub there. Yep. And then I forgot the name of the place, but it's like on the like third floor, and it's right behind the Don Quixote.
Yeah. I know
I,
exactly what you're talking about.
we go there every time we can. And it was just ridiculous because, I mean, why would we? But yes, there is something comforting about having I don't know.
Sometimes you just don't want to think in a foreign language, and that's
Yes.
okay. That's why
Yes.
I loved going to McDonald's when I was in Japan.
Me too. You know what? I went once, and I mean, it was good, but it was, it was McDonald's.
Yeah.
So what came first? Was it? And again, I don't want to assume, but it was Japanese language learning first, and then the airline industry. How did that work out?
Actually, it was a little bit of Japanese language learning in university after watching anime from the time I was 14. When I was 14, I decided I wanted to go to Japan one day, whether it was as a university student or to work. By the time I was in college, I took a year of Japanese language, and then I wanted to go study in Rome for 6 weeks, so I took a year of Italian right after it.
Wow.
Graduated, worked and got a job at an office at the registrar at the university I graduated from, and my professor before I graduated was like, "You should really apply to the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, the JET program."
Mm-hmm.
And go over to Japan for a few years and teach. And I was like, I was 21. What did I know? I didn't know my head from a hole in the wall. I was like, I want to work a little bit first. I want to get some real life work experience before going over. 6 months behind the desk, I was like, man, I really should have applied for the JET program.
Right.
So I toughed it out for a year, and then I applied for the cycle immediately after. And at my interview, I'll never forget it. They're like, well, you've picked Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto. And, these, of course, are like the places that everybody ranks on their preference sheets. What if we can't place you at any of these? Would you turn down an assignment? And I'm like, I don't care where I go as long as I get to go. And those were my famous last words, because literally 2 months later, I got my acceptance letter. And they're like, you are going to Tottori. And I'm like, oh, where's Tottori? So I would go on the internet and look it up. And literally at the time, this was like 2003. The only thing that cropped up was like a picture of a sand dune with a camel and an apple pear. And that was it. That was all Tottori was known for. I'm like,
oh my God.
I'm like, I literally got assigned to the most rural and remote prefecture that has the lowest population density in the entire country. But I said, I'll go anywhere. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go for a year, and it doesn't work out. I had the best 5 years of my 20s.
That is awesome.
Living amongst rice fields and fishing villages. The schools I worked at were great. I have like a close group of friends that I'm still friends with, like almost 20 years later. Like, it's just that was my second home.
That is that in the north?
It is. If you were to look at a map, it's just west of Osaka, north of Okayama, and east of Hiroshima. So it's like on the Sea of Japan, but there's a little mountain range that divides Hiroshima and Okayama from Tottori and Shimane.
I know people when they travel for the first time. I mean, Tokyo is obviously, 98% of people are going to go to Tokyo first, and I love it. It's my favorite city in the world. But isn't there something to be said? Not even something to be said, but like, isn't it amazing? Like when you get outside of Tokyo, just how vast and how beautiful it is.
Absolutely. One of the things that most people never believe me when I say this is that when I lived over there, that's when Lost in Translation came out.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And everyone was talking about, oh, this is such a great cinematic masterpiece. And I'm like, this film is garbage, because all it talks about is the expat experience of living in Tokyo with like a day trip to Kyoto. It's half of the things that like Scarlett Johansson and her, little band of friends do. She would have been arrested or thrown out of the country, or, going into the pachinko parlor. She wouldn't have come out of that pachinko parlor, to be perfectly honest. So it didn't really give a fair representation of the foreigner living experience. Because it's one thing to travel to Japan and experience it as a traveler. It's a very different experience when you live there.
Right.
But that's any country you live in, it's very different between being a tourist and being a resident.
Yeah. Well, the movie did have the Jesus and Mary chain in it. One of my favorite bands. So I just the closing scene, just like
a little partial to it. Then
I mean, listen, the closing scene where she, they're kind of staring at each other and just like Honey. So, was that a hard transition for you though? Like, you lived where before?
I was living in Gainesville, Florida. So I was, just about an hour and a half north of where I live now in Orlando. But the hard part for me was that Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto to a lesser extent are very accessible for travelers because of the accessibility based on the amount of English language there is everywhere. In Tottori, I break it down like this. I could not go to a McDonald's and order a cheeseburger with a picture menu without knowing some semblance of Japanese.
Right. No one's speaking English.
Yeah. And I literally the first time I did it, I didn't know at the time, but there were 2 students that were in line behind me and that were students at the high school I was assigned to. So I went to school the next day to, do the rounds of introducing myself to everyone, meeting all the principals and the administration and all the teachers. And the students are like, we helped Karen Sensei order a cheeseburger yesterday because she couldn't do it on her own. And I'm just I'm like 23 and I'm just like, I'm not self-sufficient anymore. I felt like I was very reliant and dependent upon everybody I worked with.
Yeah.
Like even going, because for me, I have a shellfish allergy, which sucks because where I was at was famous for its the matsubagani, a type of winter crab. And literally everything has seafood in it. And I'm just like, oh, this sucks. I can't eat a lot of the things that where I was living was famous for.
Oh my God. Were you homesick at all? Or you were just like, this is where I need to be?
I wasn't homesick. I didn't experience culture shock when I came to Japan, but when I went back home after living there for 5 years, it was a very large adjustment for me because I had learned how to drive on the other side of the road. I had a Japanese driver's license. I was, used to having my voice, my speaking pace, set to, teaching non-native speakers of English. So I was always speaking at like a quarter or a third speed of what I normally speak at. So I would go home and everyone's like, are you okay? Are you having a stroke? You're speaking very, very slowly. And I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry.
Trust me, that's perfect for our audience. Trust me. we don't have the most, you can be as slow as you need to be.
But it was one of those things whenever I would go back to Japan after visiting my family, at the time my parents were living just north of Miami. So I'd come back at like South Florida speaking speed. And everyone's like, whoa, 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 you can just slow down. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Allow me to adjust my volume and my speed setting again.
Right. It is amazing how, I don't want to say different, but it is, even just in like, if you're there for 2 weeks, there are things that you notice in whether it be subways and trains or the fact that you could eat off the street. There's no trash anywhere.
Correct.
It is, if for someone who's been there for 5 years, it had to be, were you disappointed? Were you just shocked at the way that we live here in the United States?
One of the things that I was actually frustrated about when I came back was that I was so used to the way the Japanese sort their rubbish. So in the States, basically we sometimes separate paper and bottles and plastic from the regular trash, but like in Orlando it's one giant bin that you put everything in. Like
right.
Everything's all your recyclables are in one bin. In Japan,
one bucket. Right.
There's like specific days for specific items, and if you don't like separate those items and you can't put them out the night before, you have to put them out the morning of. And like Tuesday is only burnable trash, Wednesday is only glass bottles and aerosol cans. And if you where I lived, if I put the wrong thing out on the wrong day, the little local garbage police that lived in my apartment building would rifle through the trash and find a piece of mail that had my address on it, and would take out all the wrong parts and put the garbage back in front of my front door with a note being like, this is not the day for this.
In a mean sense, or of a, hey, you might not, I'm just going to smarten you up?
Sometimes it depended. Sometimes it felt like it was like, haha, silly foreign girl, you tried really hard, but today's not the day.
Right.
But then other days it was just like, you could tell that the letters got a little more passive aggressive the longer I lived there. So I couldn't afford to keep getting it wrong.
Right. You don't want to leave your house like peeking out the blinds. Like, I can't see these people.
Well, and then, some of us would stay like 1 year. Others would like stay like 5 years. Like I stayed 5 years, but I had to move across the prefecture and back at one point. But like the school I worked at had a second foreign teacher of English. And the first 3 years I was there, they kept changing every year. So they were like, one person would come in, a year was enough, and they'd go home. Another person would come in. And then like the landlady knew that I was the senpai for those particular individuals. So if they didn't get their garbage right, I'd be the one to get the note. And I have to be the one to explain to them why their garbage is wrong, but their garbage is outside my house and not theirs.
All right. But there's a little sense of pride in that, though, right? You're like,
I mean, I prefer being Karen Senpai for something other than garbage, but, you know, it was what it was based on where we were living.
Get it where you can, you know. Again, I'm doing a little Twitter
little searchy search.
Stalking. Yeah, listen.
Research.
I gotta do my homework.
I appreciate that.
The news of the day. Well, not really the news. It's probably pretty old, but I do remember being woken up one morning by my lovely wife, Cheryl. Who?
Hello, Cheryl.
Yes.
Good evening.
She doesn't listen to this at all. No, please. No.
But still, the sentiment's there.
It is. It is. Well, just to veer off course, she was like, "Well, I could be a guest on the show." I was like, "No, you cannot. No, you cannot." I said, "You have no idea what you're going to get into if you do that."
It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, the listeners can bring it. I was like, "No, you do not.
Do not have the listeners bring the questions. Never.
Right. I was like, "You do not want to. You have no idea what you're getting." I was like, "No, I'm not. We're not doing that." The news of Charla and Chris Broad.
My heart. Oh my gosh, you have no idea.
All right, so talk to me. Are you a fan of both?
I am a huge fan of Chris Broad and Charla. Mm-hmm. When I was living in Japan, YouTube wasn't a thing. Had the YouTuber thing been a thing when I was living over there, I'd probably still be over there. I'm calling them, and I'm pretty sure they probably haven't heard this one before. I'm calling them they're calling them Charmeleon, but with like CHR from Chris and then Charla's name, like kind of smashing it all together. I love, like, Charla had quite the journey, if I remember, because she was married, she was living in South Korea, they got divorced. Right?
Wasn't the guy's name June?
No. That's Rachel and Jun. They're down in Fukuoka. I love them too.
All right. Okay. I get them confused sometimes.
No,
okay,
they're all part of this like great Tokyo creative group that have like so many outstanding content creators. Currently Hannah's another one. I also love, Joey the Anime Man and the guys at Trash Taste. Like, there's a whole bunch of them that they all work together and they all do amazing things. But yeah, no, Rachel and June, from what I can tell, they have their cats, they have their little farm, they're doing great. Still very much in love and very happily married.
Good.
But yes, Chris, I had noticed that there was a significant crossover, especially when I think Chris either moved up to the Sendai area or she moved down from Morioka. And I was like, I mean, I don't want to be the one to be like, I don't normally ship people. Like, I really don't like shipping people just because I'm like, it makes it awkward if they have their own partners and everything else like that. Sure. But when she, had that video earlier this week with her, juicy Q&A and like, right. she brought up the question and she said that her and Chris were together. I was like, yes! like I don't even know them. And I'm just like, I just love today.
I know. I mean, I know them again because my wife watches YouTube videos as if she were 13. That's all she watches. Like I will watch some sporting event or whatever, and she will sit there with her iPad just watching videos. And she's into plants now, so she has a plants. Who's the other? First, let's stay with these two. What was it? Just the fact that he was creating content in English about Japan? Was it? What was the connection?
I don't remember how it started. I think it was probably a few years back when I was, before I started doing all the wrestling content creating stuff, and I was traveling and flying around and stuff. I wanted to do more travel based. I was in, the nerd scene, so I was into I'm still am, but I don't really cover it as much as I used to. I like Star Wars and theme parks, but I was looking for something to reconnect me with Japan. And I was looking for videos about Japan, about things in Japan I didn't know or things I wanted to go see and do. I just wanted to basically live vicariously through someone. Mm-hmm. And all of their videos came up. Chris came up, the Joey the Anime Man came up, Charla came up, and currently Hannah, and like all these different content creators that are like all under that Tokyo creative umbrella. And I was like, oh my God, they're all living their best lives. They're living the life I always wanted to live when I was in Japan after I finished teaching. So it was one of those things where I was just, I was just happy for people, and like I love seeing them succeed. I love that they found their passion, and they're bringing a lot. They're not just talking about their daily life abroad. They're talking about the struggles of being a foreigner living in Japan. And a few years ago when there was that I don't even know if it was a few years ago, where there was that absolutely horrible Jake Paul video. Is it Jake Paul, Logan
Mhm.
Paul, one of the Pauls that went to the suicide forest?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that whole thing leading to one of them or both of them now possibly being in WWE just doesn't sit well with me, but that's neither here nor there. Raina Scully is another great one. She used to work for Crunchyroll and does like a lot of anime stuff, and now she's back in Japan with her family. But yeah, it was just one of those things where they started having the conversations about the foreigner living experience in Japan that a lot of people were refusing to have, which made them only endeared them more to me. So yeah, if I could ever interview them, they like interviewed like any of them, Chris and Charlotte would probably be at the top of the list.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, his studio is amazing now.
Oh my! It's like it was like a $30,000 studio, and then there was that big earthquake.
Yes,
and the poor like he put all that money into it, and then they had to like come in and clean it up and refix it. I loved the ramen bar because and here in Orlando, there's a bar called Suzuru. It's like a Japanese style izakaya, but it has that like Showa era vibe with like the old movie and beer posters and like all like the old toys and the Godzilla stuff and everything. I was like, I want to just go walk through his studio and just like spend the day just taking pictures of everything, because it's like it's so over the top but so amazing to look at the same time.
Yeah, and he's just a guy that came over and just started doing videos for his family, right?
Yeah, well, he was a teacher over here.
Right.
And then he did the video thing to like, let his family know how he was doing, yada, yada, yada. And it just snowballed because people want to go to Japan, but they don't know how to go over there. They don't know, about the visa process, or if, going over as a teacher is better, or going over as a student is better, or, getting married and going over as a spouse is better. So it was very interesting to see them all tell their different stories about their experiences living in Japan.
I love Natsuki.
Oh, Natsuki.
I love Natsuki. And I think like two things. And again,
about Ryotaro. Ryotaro is the other one.
Oh yes, he is tremendous. Yes, I love it.
Was it Too Much Volcano? Was that the song?
Too Much Volcano.
I love me some Too Much Volcano.
I kid you not. To this, I believe I said it to my wife today. Too Much Volcano.
Too Much Volcano, man.
I swear. He was doing some thing where he was lonely or something. I don't know. But he wound up putting in a Duran Duran song, so I was very happy with that. And he's a big '80s fan, but also they do talk wrestling. So
do they?
Yes, he does a podcast with some guy from Radio 1, I want to say. And he's a big wrestling fan. They talk every once in a while. It'll go bleeding into like wrestling, and like Cheryl will be like, they're talking about wrestling. They're talking about guys, I'm like, shit. All right, cool. Yeah, I would love to have him on. I don't know if it would.
Could you imagine if you manage that? You need to call me.
I'll put you on. It'll be me and you. Let's go.
I will fly. I will be able to answer that bat signal so fast.
I'm all about it. And the other thing that he does. And like you've seen his almost, I want to say, documentary style, like the editing he did for like Fukushima.
Yes.
And
that one was so good.
Right. Like these are really legitimately great pieces.
Yes.
Like great documentaries. And he's highlighting people rebuilding, and unbelievable. Yeah. And like the bike journey across, that was a good one too.
Oh yeah, with Connor and Joey and Garnt.
Right. What was the guy's name? They had to do a commercial for the squeezy protein stuff.
That was Joey, the anime man.
Okay.
He's half Japanese, Australian.
Yes. And then, all right. So my last point about Japanese vloggers or people living in Japan. Anyway, who was they were a couple. And they're no longer together, apparently. They were both, I think they started out in Korea, and then they moved to Japan.
Wasn't that was Charla and her partner, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't Charla. It was...
she and her partner went to Korea and then got a divorce and came back, I think.
Oh.
Because she was married at some point.
I want to say Natalie's her name. What was
No,
her
I don't
name?
follow Natalie. I don't think
No, it wasn't Natalie. Like I like it's going to be so ridiculous. I'm going to walk out and be like, "Sure, what's that person's name?"
it's gonna come
like
to
an
you
old
at
man.
like 2:00 in the morning. You're like, son of a biscuit.
Texting her. But they had so the guy did a review on a toaster, a toaster, Karen. It is a $300 toaster. I bought said toaster.
Did you?
We're redoing our kitchen, and the way he was describing and he was showing this toaster makes a nice little crust on the outside. Inside, it's still squishy, like the perfect piece of toast. And like, oh, here it is. Cheryl just was the Herbie. She texted me. Look at this. How about that? Simon and Martina.
Oh, the name sounds familiar.
Simon and
They split
Martina.
up? That's a bummer.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and she moved back. Yeah, she moved back to Japan.
Okay.
Yeah, they left and they broke up, and then she went back, and
Oh.
yeah. But Simon talked about this fucking toaster, and I'm like, again, we were redoing our entire kitchen, and he's talking about this toaster, and I'm like, all right, and he's showing it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is great, and he's like showing him reheating like pizza, and it looked amazing. I was like, forget that toaster.
Yeah, no. I always said to myself, the biggest regret I have is not bringing home a one of the Japanese toilet seats with like the built-in heating and the bidet and like the whole like. I mean, they're probably about $200 to $300, but you know what? Next time I go, I might just drop the money because you know what? Even though I'm in Florida, sometimes in the winter there's a little bit of chill on the seat in the middle of the winter.
Yes.
And then a kotatsu, which is like a heated table with the blanket that you see in like all the animes in the wintertime.
Yes.
One of the best. Oh, God, I lived under that because the thing about Japan, and especially in the winter, is that it's like a wet winter. So, and then the building insulation is not that great. So, you have your space heater, you have your heated table. Sometimes you're wearing like a hoodie and a hoodie on top of your hoodie because running the heating unit is just so expensive that it's easier just to like layer up and just like heat half your body. Like I remember it's like with the heated table, I'd turn it off at night and the blanket would keep all the heat trapped in. So I would just like, I'd put my pillow on the floor and I would just sleep underneath the table because it kept my legs warm.
Wow. What were worse, the winters or the summer?
Oh God.
I went 1 year for G1.
Yeah.
It was the hottest I've ever experienced.
Did you go in August?
Yeah.
Yeah. So August in Japan is like August in Florida in the middle of the summertime, where it's like 100% humidity and like 95 degrees. So you just step outside and you're soaking wet. Like you feel disgusting and gross.
Oh.
And I don't know what their secret is, but Japanese people don't sweat.
No.
They don't sweat and they don't stink. So it's like I'm like looking as if I'm like, a less than savory individual in church sweating as if, I've done all the wrongs in the world just by stepping out of my front door.
Right.
And my friends are just like, I just ran a 5K and I feel great. And I'm like, I
couldn't do anything. I couldn't do like I would go to the shows and then I would just be dead.
Yep.
Like I couldn't, it was so uncomfortable. And like I don't like hot to begin with.
Yeah.
Oh. And somebody warned me. They were like, because I was trying to get somebody to go with me, and he had already gone, and it was like, dude, you don't even know what the fuck you're in for.
Correct.
With this heat, like it is going to be like nothing you have ever felt before. I was like, come on, summer, Philly, blah blah blah. Nope.
No.
You would walk out of that hotel and it would be like a hairdryer hitting you.
Yeah, no, it's like the weather is identical to Orlando in the summertime, but in Japan they also have the concept of called cool biz, which means it has to reach a certain temperature before certain places, especially like public buildings, gymnasiums, schools, will turn on the air conditioning.
Oh.
So I actually collapsed mid-sentence in the middle of class one day because it was so hot and humid in my classroom. We had the windows open because the air conditioning it was like literally a degree or two just under that they couldn't turn the air conditioning on.
Oh, I would have died. I
almost did because had I not cleared the chalkboard railing and the desk, I would have had this massive gash on my forehead after I like hit something on the way down.
Oh my God. Like how hot was it in the room?
Well, there was no breeze. Like it's like, if you're outside in Florida in the summertime and there's no breeze and it's just hot and wet and the air's not moving, it just you just can't breathe after a while because you're just sitting there just marinating.
Right. You really are. You're sitting in your own sweat.
You're like just like turning into a steam bun, just standing there. So it's not a good look. I assure you.
It really isn't. So how did all this? This is one of the most interesting conversations I've had. I've had it. I'm not lying.
Thank
Like
you.
I've had to do. This is number 3, number 4. I don't know. I'm fascinated. All right. So how did a flight attendant who studied abroad, teaching, anime fan, get into the pro wrestling?
Okay, well, back when I was a university student, I watched the Monday Night Wars unfold in real time.
Okay.
So I was a WWF fan. The match that got me into WWE was the No Mercy ladder match between Edge and Christian and the Hardys for the Terry Reynolds Invitational.
Okay.
That was the match I watched and said, all right, maybe I'll give this wrestling thing a go. And then that was like 1999 to the early aughts. So right up until I left for Japan, I was watching WWF, and I remember watching, I bought my competition and all that stuff. I remember all of it. What I kick myself about is that when I was in Japan, I saw, Kensuke Sasaki and Akira Hokuto on TV, and I knew they were wrestlers, and I had, I would see the occasional wrestling poster when I would go to Osaka. But I was so self-conscious about it that I never asked anybody about it. And I kicked myself because I could have gotten in on the ground floor with Tanahashi and Goto and Naito and like all the big names that are like some of my favorite wrestlers now. I could have spent the last 15 to 20 years of my life following their journeys. But I was more into watching TV dramas and watching Japanese comedy and variety TV shows back then. But like wrestling was always like, they didn't ever come to Tottori because Tottori is so small. Like the offshot, I think like the last time they went to like, for example, New Japan went to Tottori was in 2018. There was a stop for the Super Junior Tag League. Oof. And I only remember that specific tour because they went to the Tottori Sangyo Taikan, which is right next to the apartment building I first lived in when I lived in Japan.
Right next door.
Literally, I could like if I could stand on my balcony, I could throw a shoe and hit the building.
Now, was that your first show you went to?
No, I didn't go to. I hadn't gone to wrestling until 2014. So I came back in 2009. I worked for a Japanese boarding school in New York for a couple of years, and during that time, I started watching Monday Night Raw again because I was on call Monday night. So I would just put it on, do my laundry, check on my students, whatever. When I was flying, same thing. When I was on call and I was at a hotel, I would put it on like as background noise. But while I was flying, I met a guy here in Orlando. And he was into wrestling, so we went to an NXT show together. Now, this NXT house show, the main event was Sami Zayn and Adrian Neville against Finn Balor and a debuting Hideo Itami.
Okay.
So Hideo Itami and Finn Balor won the match, and then they proceeded to go around the ring and take pictures with everyone after the match. I took one look at Kenta, and I was like, oh my God, who is this man? I need to know who he is.
Right.
And then I started going to NXT regularly, but I also started learning about Pro Wrestling Noah because I was curious to know about like why he was such a big deal, because I didn't know who he was because I wasn't in touch with the Japan wrestling scene. So then I started watching NXT regularly, and then they brought in Shinsuke and they brought in Asuka, and I never knew how to get tickets to go to Full Sail, so I would just watch NXT, even though it was like across town for me. I'd watch it on TV, whatever. And by this point, I was working at one of the local universities where I work today, and they had a retweet contest for Full Sail for like win 2 NXT tickets for a taping. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll retweet it. Why not?
All right.
Well, it turned out that was the finale of the Cruiserweight Classic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I got to go to the Cruiserweight Classic in Full Sail and, see Kota Ibushi for the first time and Zack Sabre Jr. for the first time and Mascara Dorada and all all the guys that made up 205 Live. And I was like, oh man, this is so good.
Right.
And then still didn't get into any Japanese wrestling beyond, whatever I saw in NXT as they kept bringing in people and, putting the belt on Shinsuke and putting the belt on Asuka, whatever. Fast forward to 2017. That was when I was, WrestleMania was coming to Orlando. So I had started following British wrestling because a lot of my friends at the time were all like, you need to watch Brit Wrest. It's really great. Yada, yada, yada. I was like, all right. So then I started watching WCPW. and they had this very ambitious, like 96 person pro wrestling World Cup on YouTube, and it was all streamed for free. Mm-hmm. So I watched the Japan bracket. And I was introduced to Kushida, who I would like to credit Kushida for, Kenta started changing. Kenta and Kushida are responsible for who I am today as a content creator with wrestling.
Okay.
Kenta was the one who got me interested in Japanese wrestling scene. So I started learning about Noah. I mean, Shinsuke and Asuka, of course, they're both very important as well. But it was seeing Kushida wrestle a young lion, Sho Tanaka, at that particular WCPW Japan bracket. I was like, I messaged a friend. I was like, who is this guy? Right. He speaks English. Like, I was like, he speaks English. He's got all these championship belts. And I was like, I didn't know. Like, I remember like around that time, Liger was on like a one NXT, and I was like, who's this guy? He has to be really important. So it's like I started putting the pieces together. But after that Japan bracket, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch New Japan. And what's the first thing I turned on after making that decision? The G1.
Wow. Jumping right into the pool. Nice.
I dove headlong into the deep end. And, the thing about, discovering about Japanese wrestling and the Japanese wrestling fans is that I felt the connection to Japan that I had been missing because of my current day job. Right. So I would start, tweeting in Japanese. I would start interacting with Japanese fans. I would meet up with people at different shows. And it kind of just snowballed into everything that goes on now with, me working with Post and me working with Tamatanga on his podcast and, coming on here and talking with you for the first time after like following Super J's Cast for like 3 years now.
I'm thrilled that all that you were able to experience all that. And like, I'm fascinated by the fact that like you dove head first. Like, you are a pro wrestling fan. Like, you watch everything.
I try.
Right.
It's very tiring.
Yeah. I mean, how did you, so again, the transition from WWEF to, again, New Japan, are you watching it on Access? Are you, like, you're not just dropping your $10 a month? Are you, like, downloading torrents? Like, how are you finding the content?
Well, the thing is that I watch Stardom on delay on Stardom World. I do with coverage for Post. I get the tickets covered for the live streams for that. New Japan World. But, when they have it on Fight for whenever they do their US shows, I pay out of pocket if I'm not going there in person.
Right, but before, like you're making the transition. You see
I may or may not have found some distributors of DVDs.
Okay, I'm familiar with that.
That's how I got my Noah fix and my love for TMDK, especially Shane Haste.
Yes.
I have a very, very soft spot for Shane, especially when he fights against Kenta. Based upon their time. And that's also why I'm also glad I'm finally back into watching Noah again, because especially when he came back to Noah earlier this year before he got injured, it was just like I finally got to, experience more of Go Shiozaki and Nakajima and Keno and all the guys that I remember when they were in 2016 Noah. They're very different people from back then to who they are now.
Man, yeah. Just the last show I was at in Japan at Korakuen was a Noah show, and it feels like it's a completely different promotion from that time.
I've never been to a show at Korakuen Hall.
Really?
My first trip back to Japan was for Wrestle Kingdom in 2020, and that was my first time back to Japan in 6 years.
Wow.
And I had made plans with so many different friends to go to a lot of wrestling shows, but most of the wrestling shows weren't at Korakuen Hall. There was the two dome shows, but I went out to 2AW all the way out in Chiba. I went to like a Basement Monster show. I went to Shinkiba to watch Stardom, but like Korakuen Hall has eluded me.
Wow. I mean, when I'm trying to think, the last time it felt like there was a million shows, like All Japan and Big Japan would run the same day.
Yeah.
I think there would be Wave would be there.
Yeah.
And, Ice Ribbon would be there. And then we would go out to, what's the barn? It's like a fire hazard waiting to happen.
Well, that's a lot of places in Japan, honestly.
Is it First Ring? First Ring?
Oh, Shinkiba, yeah. It looks like a tool shed out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it looks like you would pick up lumber at Home Depot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's literally made out of like tin roofing walls.
Right, it really is.
Very drafty. I don't recommend sitting against the wall. That's not like with the bleachers because I was so cold.
Yeah, it was an experience.
Yeah.
And then Not First Ring, but that was that one. Face, Shinjuku Face.
Haven't been there yet. That's on my list next time.
So the first time I go to Japan, it was the return of FMW. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to find a way to get tickets. So I bought tickets at Corkin, but I got the wrong date. I think I got the next weekend.
Oh, no.
And I didn't know it until like the last minute. So my Cheryl goes, try downstairs. Maybe they can. I was like, Cheryl, this is like an indie promotion of indie promotions, right? They're not even going. They're going to look at the ticket and not even know what this is.
Yeah.
Right. Go down. The guy's like, I felt like I was sitting at the principal's office, and I sit there, and he's like, okay, I kind of explain, and he understands, and he's writing stuff down. He gets on the phone. He gets on another call, talking to somebody, writing something, talking.
Yeah.
He's like, Mr. McDonald, give this paper to I couldn't even tell you the name, but like they will exchange your ticket and get you in the building. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I went to Boston and this happened, they'd be like, well, you're fucked, son.
Hope you can find someone to buy your ticket so you can buy another one. That's
right. And yeah, it's like on the 5th floor in the middle of the red light district,
yep.
Right? Yeah, unbelievable. So I can't. Wow, I didn't know that you hadn't been there. Well, you got to check that off.
That's my goal for next time is definitely, especially because I want to see All Japan and Noah, and I know that that's a venue that they regularly run around that time of year. So fingers crossed.
Now, so getting deep into Noah and getting deep into New Japan, have you gone back into the archives, looked around, watched as much as you could? I'm assuming. Are there people back in the day that is like, ooh, I like that guy. Ooh, I like that guy. He's really good. Like, is there, like, has that happened to you yet?
WH Park over at Post.
I know WH Park.
Love me some WH Park. He threw me a link to a match between Akira Taue and Satoshi Kojima from 2005, and he said, "Karen, are we able to swear on this?"
Absolutely,
okay.
Please.
I just wanted to make sure before he dropped it. He's like, "This is very much your shit," and I'm like, "Oh, is it?" And he's like, "It has Kojima in it." I'm like, "Oh, does it?" 2005, Karen, had she watched wrestling in Japan, she would have been a massive Satoshi Kojima fan. More so than I'm a huge fan right now, but oh man, Koji,
wow.
Man. And see, New Japan World needs to put more of the archive stuff onto New Japan World, just because, like, for example, for those who don't know me, I am also a very huge Roppongi 3K fan and a huge fan of Sho and Yoh. So I tried to go back and watch their Young Lion matches, like, when they debuted in the original Never Openweight tournament. Those matches aren't on New Japan World. So I don't know where I'd have to go to find them, but they're not the one place that they should be, because that's part of their career. So I'm hoping at some point they'll consider putting the back catalog for more of their talent onto New Japan World.
It's so weird. Like, a lot of the great stuff back in the day, because I'm an old man, was the TV show. And like, I find it amazing that New Japan doesn't have the rights to that. Like, how can they? It's your product, but it's the TV network that owns a lot of that.
Asahi Television owns everything.
So it's like, you get it through tape collecting, and then you find it, like, put it up, because that's some of the best stuff that that people just don't have any eyeballs on, just because they don't have access to it.
And then that's the thing, is that I feel like there are a lot of wrestlers that people are sleeping on purely because there's the on the international audience side of it. Yes. Purely because of the limited amount of information. And, there are places on the internet where you can acquire such footage, but it would say more to, the fan base if those matches were added. I don't know how the logistics would work about adding English commentary, because I know they do the occasional vintage match with English commentary, but it's just like, I feel like a lot of newer fans, myself included, are like from like 2017 on. But when you have a company that's 50 years old, there's so much history that's not readily available or accessible. And we don't buy DVDs like the Japanese do.
Right.
And Japanese DVDs are very expensive. I don't have $70 to drop for a DVD. I can do a lot of damage at a Walmart with $70 in the DVD bin. Let's be honest.
Right. It is amazing that DVDs are still a thing.
Yeah.
So now, do you watch the English feed or do you watch the Japanese feeds?
It depends on my mood, honestly. I'm a massive Kevin Kelly fan, so
he stinks. We love Kevin. He's on the show often.
I feel like I learn not just about the match but about calling matches by listening to him call matches. Like I feel like it's him as a commentator, in my mind, is one of the best, if not the best, in the world. And it's a masterclass on doing all the things and working through all kinds of conditions. Because, there have been times where he's had to like hold a monitor on his lap and call a show because the table's gone, or, he has to stand up and, Lance Archer throw somebody through a table. Like it's just one of those things where in my mind, he's a consummate professional, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. And I feel like I always learn something new from him every time he calls a match.
Yeah. And one of the things when I always mention it to him is like his love of sports, like you can almost taste
feel
it. Yeah. Like if he was not involved in pro wrestling, he would absolutely be calling baseball or something along that with it, like a cadence.
He'd be a great baseball commentator.
I know. I mean, listen, he loves his baseball. Loves his baseball.
I appreciate him and I will agree to disagree on which of the New York teams is the better choice. Just right. Like he and I disagree about which Florida college football team is the best around Thanksgiving, because he and I went to rival schools. So there's like baseball season when the Yankees and the Mets are going, and when Florida and Florida State are going. Those are the two times that I love Kevin, but I don't like him very much.
He loves his Mets. He loves. Well, I mean, he loves to turn the screws on Phillies fans, as Carino is one of them. So yes, So what you said? The way he calls a match.
Yeah.
You learn something every time he calls.
Yeah.
Like, give me an example. Like what? Like why do you like him above? Say, I don't know. Pick a name. I don't know. Wrestling commentator X. Like what is he giving you that you can't find somewhere else?
I love me some Mauro Ranallo. I love me some Mauro Ranallo.
Yeah.
But sometimes even when I was in NXT and I was in the room with him and I could hear him calling matches like right next to me, sometimes he had too many pop culture references that some were very niche. So it was hard to follow along. Kevin explains things in my mind that if you're watching wrestling for the first time, you can understand what's going on.
Yeah.
He can tell you the story. He can tell you what's happening. And it's hard because there are a lot of commentators that they do the same thing, but sometimes they have so many things that they want to talk about that they're talking so fast that you can't keep up with you can't watch what you're watching because you're trying to focus on what he's saying, so that you're not like, it's just like Excalibur is a great example. I love Excalibur, but sometimes he has like too many things that he has to cover all in one breath.
Yeah.
Especially as Rampage is going off the air and he's like, here's a laundry list of all the things I need to talk about right now. And It's like, do you remember the Micro Machine Man from the 80s?
Yes, I sure do. Yes.
I always think of that because it's just so much information that I just feel like I end up gaping at the screen, just being like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Kevin has this natural ebb and flow where he knows how to time things where you can follow what's going on, but you don't miss any of the action.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the key point of someone who does play-by-plays. And that's why I enjoyed listening to the Japanese commentary as well, because they have such a diverse panel. And it's always good to hear the wrestlers talk wrestling. And that's what I miss about, this time of year with the COVID protocols. I miss hearing Rocky on commentary. Because Rocky, even though he'd like stick it to Bushi and, have his little rivalry, listening to Rocky talk about wrestling as a wrestler is fascinating to me. Just like hearing any of the Japanese wrestlers that they put on commentary. It doesn't matter if it's Master Wato or Tanahashi. Hearing people talk about the craft that they are honing and working on, and even complimenting people they're normally rivals with. It just speaks a lot to how much everyone loves the wrestling.
Yeah. Is that one of the main reasons why you gravitate more to, like, I'm assuming that you're not watching a lot of WWE now. Like,
No, unfortunately, between being someone who lives here in Orlando and knowing that all the hoops they went through to become an essential company during the pandemic, and then they immediately started firing people
mhm,
where they were an essential company, but their employees were expendable, it made it hard to watch. So watching a lot of, watching NXT Black and Gold get gutted and rebranded 2.0 was hard to watch. Everything that's going on in the recent media about, NDAs and such. At some point, I can't with a good conscience watch it anymore.
right.
And it sucks because I have friends that still work there and I want them to succeed, but I'm also just like, as long as you're getting paid and you're getting you and yours are being taken care of, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It is what it is. It's your life. It's not mine. But I can't watch it. I really can't.
No, I agree. I'm with you 1,000%. Do you think that the New Japan fandom, and I hate saying fandom, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do you think the New Japan fandom has something to do extra, I guess, with your love of this product?
I think every fandom has its rays of sunshine and its dark corners. If it were like, it's the same thing with Star Wars fandom and Marvel fandom, But for me, yeah, talking about Stardom as well. The New Japan fans that I've become friends with, both on both sides of the oceans, as it were, 'cause all the oceans in the world are connected. But the Japanese speaking fans, the English speaking fans, same thing with Stardom, and like, dabbling in the Noah fandom. I've been able to find a lot of great people, and I feel like finding the right people in a fandom can make you enjoy it just as much as, finding the wrong side of the fandom can make you be like, man, this isn't for me.
Right. Right. Do you see more of the good or the bad doing what you do with post and your writing? I guess a better question would be, how do you balance the good and the bad?
I think a lot of the good and the bad got weeded itself out. A lot of the bad weeded itself out when Hana Kimura passed and when Speaking Out happened 2 years ago. Because a lot of people that I was following mutually, maybe I didn't necessarily know who they were. I just followed because they followed me. There were people that showed sides of their personality that I was like, this doesn't jive with me. This is not cool. I'm not okay with this. And it's one of those things where it took a while for me not to feel guilty about it, but embracing the remove follower, mute, and block button features
Right.
on social media has been, especially on Twitter. Twitter is probably the one that I've had to heavily curate my timeline to the point where when something happens that's big, half of the time I don't know what's going on because I've either muted the hashtag, blocked the people talking about it, or whatever. So it's sometimes I have to ask someone like, so what's going on with all this? Because apparently it's caught fire somewhere. But with posts, the community by and large is a very positive one, very supportive. I did a episode. They have a Patreon episode series called Postmarks, where they interview different members of the post community, whether it's the people on the content creating side or people who are prominent members of the community. And that was the first podcast I actually openly talked about my divorce in. And because, that was 2004, but there's still like parts of that time in my life that affect me today as an individual.
Sure.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like something I want to put on, like do a Twitter thread about or talk. Like, I don't feel like I have to talk about it because I feel the need to share my experience with the world.
Right.
I only share that part of me with parts of my community that where I feel safe. And post has always been, and hopefully will continue to be, a place I feel safe.
That's important. I mean, we try our best to be as accommodating as possible.
Yeah.
That being said, boy, we've come across some real jerks. I mean,
unfortunately, that's anywhere you go. It doesn't.
It is.
It's not limited to any one fandom. It's
yeah.
It's just life. It's part of the human population. There are jerks wherever you go, whether we like it or not.
You're telling me. So it's like, I guess, do you purposely like we opened the show with the Twitter. Like I'm not. Joel is not giving me the keys, which is a smart thing. Like, do you find yourself and your moods fluctuate with that, or are you able to kind of put that in a box and go about your life?
There are times where, like my friend Rob Schamberger, he's the artist in residence at WWE. A few years ago, he had me do a narration for a piece on the Kabuki Warriors about Asuka and Kairi's costuming and a painting he was making. And I wrote up the script, and he's like, "Well, can you record it too?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." So I recorded it and sent him the audio, thinking he was just gonna like take a clip of it. But then he put the whole thing in his WWE video, and I was like, "I'm terrified." And he's like, "Well, whatever you do, don't read the comments." And I'm like, "Are the comments bad?" So of course, like my brain goes immediately to like, everybody hates me. Oh my god, everyone's gonna think I'm gonna play moron. But he's like, no. He's like, from a mental health standpoint, if you're going to do large platform content creation, one, don't fuck it up. And two, don't read the comments, in the sense that if you read them, those aren't the people that mean anything to you.
Right.
Though if those are not people you would go to advice, those are not the people that you are going to want to receive, like, listen to their criticism. Just like duck off water off a duck's back. Just let it roll right off.
Right. Sometimes it's easier said than done, though.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Virgo, and I'm a perfectionist. So it's like, I want everything to be perfect. And, like, letting go of that control, especially when it comes to, either, doing an interview where I get, tongue tied, or I can't think of the right word, or can't think of the right thing to say, or, it's scary and like invigorating at the same time. But like for me, like, I hate the sound of my own voice. So when I have to inevitably listen to this episode back, I'm gonna be like cringing the whole time, being like, "Oh God,
you sound great."
I'm but I wanted, before I became a teacher in Japan, I originally wanted to be a sports newscaster.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I was originally a telecom journalism major, but then I got told by my peers that I should consider a different line of work because I have a face for radio. Which I was 20. It shattered my confidence, because in Florida, all the telecom girls were like 5'7", 110 pounds soaking wet, blonde, gorgeous. And I'm just like mousy little nerd girl in the corner being like, I want to be a sportscaster. And they're like, yeah, no, you're never getting down to ESPN, let alone or local TV, let alone ESPN. I'm like, all right, fine.
Well, listen, if this fat bald guy can do it, you certainly can. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say what I do is reporting, but I mean, I'm in the locker room and I'm sticking a microphone in people's faces, and I do ask questions. And so mostly it's hockey, but I mean, I cover every major sport in the city. I mean, thank God I don't have to work Phillies this week, but yeah, it's the person I got hired. She was the first female sports broadcaster in Philadelphia.
Wow.
Her name was Donna McQuillan. And, so, I mean, it's look, they're full of shit. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. All right, let's do some G1, shall we?
Let's.
You want to go backwards or you want to go forwards? Because we're only going to talk about one show, the most recent, and then we can preview a little bit while we're there. I guess some overall thoughts. It's still early, right? We're talking, guys haven't even wrestled yet in some cases. Any surprises for you?
Well, my man Goto doing the thing and defeating Tetsuya Naito was like, Post has a pick'ems contest, and I voted with my heart, not my head. And of course, I was like, nah, there's no way Goto's beating Naito. And I'm like, hot joke's on me. Let me get my clown nose out now.
But here's the thing with him. I mean, his record against Naito is before that match was not spectacular.
Correct.
You would expect. I mean, I think everyone is kind of leaning toward, at least him in the finals, Naito. Yeah.
I have Naito winning the whole thing, and now that's gone promptly out the window.
No, it should. No, put it to the front. It's that comeback story. It's that we're going to fall behind early, pick up some points late, and then away we go. That was a good match, though, right?
Yeah, it was outstanding. That's the Goto I remember from the G1 in Dallas. Like when he like went to the LA dojo and came back with like the Shibata abs, and he's like, "Oh, I'm LA dojo now," and we're like, "Yes, King, you do the thing. Go put the G, make the G and G1 mean Goto again, sir." And I think this might be the year that he surprises a lot of people because people have like given up on him.
They have, and here's the thing too. Consistently for the past year, even in when we were knee deep in pandemic New Japan, like he's. Those tag matches for the Never Six Man,
so good,
right?
So
like
good.
he's a guy that I think felt. I mean, and I'm guilty of it too. Fell completely under the radar.
Yeah,
and was a cornerstone for that pandemic era New Japan.
Yes.
How about your Tama Tonga?
Tama getting that win over Chase. I'm holding out hope, and I know that this is going to send the Jay White fans sharpening their knives after me, but I am hoping that Tama Tonga ruins the G1, or should I say the J1 for Jay White, because they have that match on the last day, and I feel like, I mean, if Jay went into the G1 not being champion, I could easily say that this is his year to win it.
Right.
But since he has the championship, I think it's with him, he's not going to drop too many losses, but it's going to be a crucial loss that's going to cost him everything. And after, they put the never open weight on Tama only to drop it to Carl Anderson, like on the first defense, I'm hoping they have something in mind to, elevate Tama again, because they're starting this babyface elevation for him, and I just want them to keep continuing it.
Right. I don't want him to cool off from that.
Correct.
Right? And I feel like, I hate to say it, but I'm not the biggest fan of that never title being dropped.
You mean to Carl? Or
yeah,
yes, I agree. I agree completely. He deserved more than a defense with it.
Not only that, just like here's a guy who he's leaving, the hottest faction.
Yes.
In New Japan, and
abroad, arguably one of the hottest.
Right. So now we don't want him to cool off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but I do like the fact that they do announce these cards in advance, so you can do a little prognostication.
Yeah.
For the final night, be like, oh, okay, this matchup's going to mean something. This matchup's going to mean something. Absolutely. Have you? Who surprised you in the sense of better match, or maybe not as great a match that you thought going in so far? And again, it's early.
Well, see, what I like about this format, and this is the format that Noah used the last couple of years for their N1 Victory Tournament, which is their version of the G1, which is funny because this year they went back to a 2-block version instead of the 4. But I digress. I think Tanahashi is doing what's best for the company moving forward now, which is starting to put over other talent, because he's dropped in the previous few years G1s, he's dropped a loss to Ospreay. And look at Ospreay now. His star's taken off. He dropped a loss to Chase, and Chase is, they're still pushing him hard in New Japan. I was pleasantly surprised that he dropped the loss to Hanare, right. Especially because Hanare has waited 6 years for his first G1, when there have been people like Shingo who have come in, or Ospreay who have jumped the queue, as it were, and to get that berth before him. I enjoyed Zack Sabre Jr. versus Kenta purely for all the Noah throwbacks that they kept doing in the match. But what I realized is that, some people are saying, oh, these matches are so long, the tag matches are so long. If you don't watch it live, put it on 2.0 speed.
Yes.
And
yes. See, this is expert level advice, though. This is right.
Of course, it's a time saver, but Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton as little chipmunks is absolutely adorable.
Right. Okay.
Especially, what was it? Oh, who was he talking about? Oh, he was talking about Jeff Cobb. So Kevin Kelly was calling Okada versus Cobb, and he's like, "It's unfair. It's unfair what Jeff Cobb can do." But listening to that at 2.0 speed, it's like, "It's unfair. It's unfair what Jeff Cobb can do." And I'm like, "This is so cute."
Little chipmunk Kevin Kelly.
Little chipmunk Kevin Kelly. But it was one of those things where, people are like, "Oh, well, this match went 10 minutes too long," and I'm like, "Put it on double speed."
Yeah. I always tell people that you don't have to watch everything. Like it's better if you do,
Yeah.
because those tag matches are there to build up maybe the matches the next night. Or
Yeah. Same thing with the backstage comments.
Right. I mean, it does add frosting to the cake, but you can burn out very easily.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
G1 is a marathon, not a sprint.
Correct.
For everyone watching. See, on the East Coast, my thing is, I'll wait until it's over, or I'll wake up just right in time for the 4 matches to start.
Yeah.
So I'll just wake my eyes open, boop, turn on the TV, and away we go. That's a pro tip right there too.
Yeah, mine's also, waking up and watching the last match and then going back and watching the rest of it while the
yes.
live stream's still open.
Yes, I absolutely do that. Absolutely. So you said your pick was Naito.
Yes.
Do you have a dark horse? Do you have a sleeper pick?
I don't know. Well, Goto might be the sleeper pick. I don't think it's going to be Yoshihashi's year as much as the Yoshihashi Hive wants to rise up. I'm still hoping beyond hope that Sonata gets his flowers, but again, it all depends on if this is actually Naito's last G1 or not, because that's the whole, he's turning 40. When he was turning 40, he wanted to retire. He had to drop out of the G1 last year. This could be that's the conversation that keeps going on, is that this could theoretically be his last G1. And Sonata's 34, so he's got time. So I like, as much as I want to say Sonata's my dark horse, after what they did with the US Championship early this year, where he got injured, but then they just said, "Oh, we'll put the belt on Ospreay anyway." I was like, maybe this isn't Sonata's year.
Right.
But I had Sonata being the one to advance out of B block purely because I want him and Okada to have that match where if he beats Okada and goes to the finals, but then it would be my other 2 picks were Shingo and Naito, and I don't see them doing 3 LIJ guys going to the semifinals of the G1.
That would be interesting, though. I mean,
we missed out on Naito Shingo last year, so I mean, if Shingo can win the D block and Naito can win the C block, we'll finally get Naito versus Shingo.
Yeah, I like Evil as a dark horse.
Evil will do it, but he won't do it by himself. And I think that's the same way, like how Yujiro is going to rack up more wins than we're expecting because they've decided to give Sho to Yujiro for the G1.
Yeah. Not a fan? You're not liking that?
I want nothing but the best for Sho. And if this is what makes him happy, then as a diehard Sho fan, I will support his Joker phase and hope he comes out on the other side eventually of it. It's just one of those things where, like, when Kenta fights as a member of Bullet Club, he fights by himself.
Right.
Jay, for the most part, because Ghetto's finally stopped playing helicopter parent, he fights for the most part by himself. Togo and Sho, they're too involved in too much of the match.
Is that disappointing for you as like if I'm going through and saying, okay, who's a fan of Sho? Number 1, your face is coming up.
Yeah. Well, my thing about Sho is that, like, if this is what he needs to do to succeed on his own right now, then that's fine. I feel they're going to, and I hate to say this, they're probably going to keep the singles championship as far away from him as possible, so long as Ishimori is also in Bullet Club. I feel like with Sho, I'm gonna have to wait until he turns face again in a few years before they consider putting the belt on him. Because I don't think if he wins it as he is now, he's going to be satisfied with it. I mean, he gets paid either way, but it just, I don't know. Maybe it's the teacher and me just wanting the best for him, but I just think he deserves more than being the goon that helps people win in the G1. Because, this weekend they're sending Hiromu and Desperado over here for Charlotte. I was hoping that they were going to send more of the juniors over because, but Yoh has the whole G1 off and he's not coming here this weekend or either. So I don't know.
That's a long drive for you. You're driving up to Charlotte?
Yeah, because flights are absolutely terrible. And next week, my homestay student, she's been living with me for the last 3 months. She has to go back to Japan next week.
Oh.
So in order for us to go to one big out of town wrestling show together, we decided to do like an American style road trip. So we're like planning to stop along the way and grab lunch.
Oh, nice.
And some friends of mine in Charlotte are going to put us up for the weekend, so we save on hotels. But yeah, I got brand new tires on my car, so I'm ready to drive my little roller skate up the East Coast.
Love it. It's always a great time, the road trip.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No doubt.
I want her to experience an American road trip before she says, I never want to do this ever again.
Right. Yeah. After the 4th hour, check in.
She'll probably be asleep. It's fine.
Right. Okay. So, what do we got coming up? Let's see here. Tomorrow, what, Saturday?
Saturday.
Tomorrow is not Saturday, but maybe if you're listening to this, tomorrow is Saturday. Saturday, we have what? Ishii Jay White. We have Okada Toriano. We have Yoshihashi versus Shingo Takagi and Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hinare. He's being called based, Aaron Hinare. What does that mean?
You're asking the wrong person. I'm not hip with the lingo.
Neither am I.
If Hinare is listening, could you please tell us what it means to be based? Because I'm in my 40s and I'm an old lady and I don't know what that means.
I have no idea what that means. Joel was like, he's being called based. And I was like, I don't know what that means.
See, when I hear the word based, I think of like basting a turkey, and I don't think that's the spelling's different. It's like BASED. So I don't know.
Everybody in their 20 in the car
with the lingo,
like, these old fucks. Right. These old fucks. Oh, Jesus. What are we looking forward to here? Ishii and Jay White will be great, right?
Ishii and Jay White. I mean, like every year I try to figure out who's going to be the man that makes Ishii smile, his little sneaky smile that he got a few years ago when he was wrestling Kenny during the G1. Yep. I think this might be the match for him. But it also depends on how much Jay White fights the match by himself.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're gonna get big match Yoshihashi against Shingo, because for some reason whenever he fights Shingo, his never 6-man champion Yoshihashi comes out.
I think that might be match of the night. Like that has the potential to be match of the night.
If we get big match Yoshihashi, yeah.
Yeah. I
mean, more so than Ishii. Like, it depends on if Jay's gonna be fighting Ishii head on or if he's gonna be running around the ring half the time.
Give me some predictions. Zack over Hinare?
As much as I would like to say it's going to be Hinare, I think Zack's going to edge him out.
All right, fair enough. Yoshihashi Shingo?
I don't think they're going to have Shingo drop 2 losses in a row.
Right.
So it's probably my heart says Yoshihashi, but my brain is saying Shingo.
Okada Toriano.
Now, see, here's the thing.
Is this a KOP? Can this be?
No, because Shingo's the KOPW champion.
Oh, that's right.
However, if we rewind back to Summer 2020 at Summer Struggle, the first inaugural King of Pro Wrestling 4-way match, it was Yano Toro who pinned Okada Kazuchika to win the championship.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people forget that it was Okada's doing for this King of Pro Wrestling. Yes. You know what I mean? Like he just turned his back on it. He has nothing to do with it.
I was calling it the Kazuchika Okada Pro Wrestling.
Right. Yeah. Is Yano getting a sneaky win here? No way, right?
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, I don't know. Like, Okada going to the finals at least the semifinals is like, I don't want to say it's a given, but it's like what everyone's expecting. But part of me just wants to see someone that's not Okada go. But it all depends on who's going to be the best. If theoretically, if Jay's winning the B block, who's the best foil for him? It's going to be Okada.
Yeah.
But I would love to see Yano pull another little bit of Yano magic out, and you just ruin Okada's night. Because, Okada's supposed to be going on paternity leave. He doesn't need to win the G1 again. He won last year.
Yeah. He's, of any guy that I think of off the top of my head that deserved that, and I put in air quotes, pandemic break, even though his title run was really underrated.
Yes.
It's him.
Yes.
Like, he's a guy, and I always go back to that documentary of him. I don't know if you saw that. His, the G1, Dallas.
Yeah.
And him just unable to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And unable to move. Like, he's walking around like he's 70 years old.
Yeah.
It feels like, and I could be dead wrong, but it feels like he has found the miracle cure. I don't know. But he feels fresher and a little bit more pep in his step.
I think Okada's also, well, one, married life's doing him well.
All right.
I think he's also realizing he doesn't need to go so hard to carry the company by himself. He's not the company. There's more than enough people to do all the heavy lifting alongside him, and I think that's been the hardest thing for him because from the time he's come back, by and large, he's been a singles champion.
Yeah.
Like, has he ever won a tag team championship?
Not in the company, no.
So that's part of it. Like, put him in a tag team for a little bit. I don't know with who because Yoshihashi and Goto are paired off. I don't think him and Ishii would make a good tag team.
Come on, Yo. What are you saying?
Oh
There's your
God,
boy sliding right in. Come on.
Yo, please.
Right? Come on.
I need them to figure out whatever mental or physical or booking barrier is keeping Yo down because I miss, as much as I love him going through his moody artistic phase right now, I do miss the flash and the sneaky smiles and I want him to look like he loves wrestling again, and I don't think that's not the vibe I'm getting from Yo right now. Like,
really? Yeah, you're feeling that too? Because
yeah.
I've said that. Yep.
I miss him. Like it came out a little bit when he was feuding with Hiromu and when he was feuding with Despy. I feel like that light has been like ever since him and Sho broke up. Like he hasn't figured out how to channel the energy he's had with other opponents towards the one person he should have the most chemistry with.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. And I would also go one further and say I would have preferred Yo in House of Torture as opposed to Sho.
Honestly, I thought when they split up that Sho was going to stay babyface and Yo was going to turn heel and join United Empire. But apparently Yo's preference is that he wants to be a babyface. Okay, but also look like you care about your job, please.
Right.
I say that from a place of love because he is also one of my other favorite wrestlers, but it just like you can tell when someone's going through the motions and they have no joy in what they're doing. I feel like he doesn't have that joy anymore, and I want him to like Marie Kondo whatever's going on in his life and just like find what sparks joy for him in wrestling.
Do you think that's elsewhere?
I think him being able to do other creative pursuits, like he's really like I think this coming weekend he's launched his own online shop through Amuse and ASmart, where it's like usually it's like pop idols and like musicians that release like CDs and merchandise, but he's releasing like his own little zine with like photos that he's taken over the last couple of years. He's designed a coffee mug. Like he has other creative pursuits, and I think him starting to be able to, you remember when he did like the art shows a few years ago and everyone gave him, part of my life, they gave him shit for it because it was all poop themed.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes, it was poop themed, it was
poop themed. But that was another thing that he, that was him trying to share his passion for his art with people. And for lack of a better term, a lot of the Western fans, we shit on it.
Well, the problem is that he's put that poop art into his ring work. Sorry, that was terrible. But boo me, boo,
but boo this man. But that's the thing is that like it's right now when he's doing all his like all white gear and everything, it's kind of more of an off white as opposed to like a pure snow white. And I feel like his costumes have now become his canvas. He just needs to figure out how to express what he wants to express. But I know that has absolutely nothing to do with the G1. That's just me trying to figure out how to make people care about Sho and Yoh again.
I mean, and it's hard because I'm sure he has 50 people in his ear. No, you got to do this.
Yeah,
no, you got to, yeah. I mean, that's the life of a pro wrestler. It seems like.
But
Ishii J1. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but at least he has his creative things that like. His creative pursuits in particular helped him through the time where he was like out injured. So he's been able to, keep doing things that he loves. So I think being able to maybe when the time comes for him to start sharing stuff like that from him again, because that's why he quit Twitter and like Instagram for the longest time because people just kept bombarding him with negativity. I think we as fans need to be also a little more cognizant about the things we say and how we say them to people. Because, with the internet, especially when it's like just text and there's no voice, there's no like facial responses or anything like that, it's sarcasm gets lost in translation. tone gets misunderstood, and sometimes people read things negatively when they're actually supposed to be a compliment. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where it's just like, I want maybe just a little more kindness from the world, if that's too much to ask.
Trust me, I would love it in every just like you said, Star Wars, hockey, or you name it.
Yeah.
It's there. And I would love if pro wrestlers just deleted their Twitter accounts. Like, I would just be so happy for everyone involved. For everyone involved.
It's the blurring of the line between being in character and promoting your work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
some should just promote, like, retweet what they're tagged in for, like, work related things, and just leave it at that.
Leave it at that.
Don't interact. Just
it's not worth it. It's never worth it. It really
isn't.
Ishii Jay White, how you feeling? He's got to lose sometime, right?
I could see this being one of Jay's few losses.
Right. A little Ishii title defense.
Correct. But I just don't want people to make that parallel that it's him doing Kenny 2.0 with Jay, because I don't think that's a fair thing to say to Jay, because him and Kenny are both very different wrestlers. But when I look at the block as a whole, Ishii would be someone I could, off the top, like, just gun to my head, quick look at it. Ishii would be easily someone that Jay could lose to.
Yeah.
Especially if Geto gets in the way, like he does sometimes.
Yes. Your personal favorite, not your personal favorite. Jay White, Kenny Omega.
It's apples and oranges.
It is. Do you like apples or do you like orange?
I lean towards Jay. Only because there were things that Kenny had said during his build-up with Tanahashi at that Wrestle Kingdom that I very much disagreed with, whether it was in character or out of character. So that as a whole, like, I've met Kenny before at events. He's an absolutely lovely person, phenomenal wrestler. But I tried to forgive, but I can't forget that time of wrestling for me. Okay. So, but with Jay has all the tools. I just need Geto to stop feeling like training wheels on him all the time. Because Jay can talk for himself. He can wrestle for himself. He can cheat by himself. He doesn't need Geto getting involved as much as he does. I know they do it to make his opponents not look as weak when Jay beats them clean. But at the same time, it's like, I can't. It's the same thing with, when Jado was a heel, Jado would always get involved. With Dick Togo, I love Evil. Evil was one of my favorite members of LIJ. But now I can't, like, watch a single match of his and not expect Dick Togo, Yujiro, and or Sho to get involved in the match. And that becomes a discredit to Evil and his ability in the long run.
Now, I'm going to give you the counter argument.
Okay.
And Joel kind of smartened me to this a little bit. And maybe I wasn't looking at it the right way. Whatever. But do you find yourself actively rooting against Evil, no matter who it's against? Like, just actively hoping that they beat Evil. And to me, that's New Japan doing their job. Like, of getting me to
I'm probably
Evil.
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I'm a fair bit of an Evil apologist.
Okay, all right.
Largely because I like I said, when he was in LIJ, he was one of my favorites. I think, him turning heel during a time where fans couldn't, so much as breathe, let alone, like, express their discomfort in him turning on LIJ, it put him in a hard place. And I don't think that's necessarily, I know a lot of people, like, it's easier to blame the person than to blame the situation he was in, but largely the situation he was in at the time they turned him played a significant role in it. It's the same thing with, Sho turning on Yoh. It was dead silent when he turned on him in Korakuen Hall. It was dead silent when he interrupted the finals of the Best of the Super Juniors, but because that's the location. If one of those turns had happened here in the States, you could hear the boos from the States to Japan.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem. But the other thing is that, the Japanese fans were doing what they needed to do to have the show so we could get to watch it along with them. Because if they wanted to cheer, fewer people would go, meaning they couldn't afford to buy the venue. They couldn't afford to pay the wrestlers. And they were keeping the fans over there were the ones that were keeping the lights on pretty much by buying the tickets for every single eight in a row Korakuen shows that they were doing at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like I need House of Torture to break off from Bullet Club because Bullet Club is too big. It feels very NWO to me, and I didn't like it when NWO was NWO. So I don't want 2.0 of that.
There's more people joining it now than there are leaving, right?
Correct. They got rid of 2.5 because I don't count Jado, because Jado and Ghetto breaking up seems to be more of a like the overarching story about Bullet Club than actually like Jade kicking out Tama Tonga at times. So, right. But like I keep hoping that House of Torture or Evil will turn on Jay at some point. I kept hoping that Kenta and Ishimori would join House of Torture just because they do submission moves and they would all just float off into the sunset and leave Bullet Club to figure out what they're doing. But yeah, so again.
But how difficult was it for you during that time period? And we're still kind of in it. Did that impact your love of the product at all? Or there have been people that I've talked to that fell in love with it more just because of the what New Japan was up against.
I think having lived over there and knowing how staunchly, for the most part, how people like to follow the rules over there. So if the government mandates XYZ, people will do it. So I was more resigned to it and being like, well, this is the situation. It is what it is. And I know that might be a very like offhanded or very like lackadaisical approach, but it's one of those things where the alternative would have been New Japan not running shows, right, and possibly closing altogether right before their 50th anniversary. Because if fans wanted to cheer, then they had their share of COVID outbreaks or temperature issues with fevers that was just kind of like and it wasn't just limited to them. Other companies had people that were testing positive or having fevers and, shows getting canceled. For me, it was more of it was a global pandemic. We're still in a global pandemic. They're making the most of what they can within the situation they're given. That's why I try not to naysay the G1s and the best of the Super Juniors and basically anything that New Japan or any other wrestling company has done in the last 2 years, because they're doing everything they can to bring wrestling to us. They don't have to, but it's just because they're just trying to keep the lights on and keep all these people employed.
That's the one thing I think people forget is there's more than just the performers in the ring.
Yeah.
There's
the people in the office, the people who set up the ring, the people that sell the tickets, the people that tear the tickets, right? Merch.
It was a scale. Like when you look back on that, and it feels like the light is at the end of the tunnel now, and it feels like the clouds are starting to part. When you look back on that time, do you just shake your head and be like, what did I live through? Right?
I think we all, if we all look back at like what the last 2 years for everyone has been, between. See, for me, having lived in Japan, I was already used to wearing a mask because I had really bad hay fever and I didn't like having my nose run while I was like teaching class or walking around like sweating. Like anyway, so for me, like wearing a mask, and I still mask up, not all the time because I am, vaccinated and boosted and all that good stuff. But like for me, it's like I never looked at it as a negative. I looked at it as I need to think that this situation doesn't only directly affect me. It affects every single person in my life. It affects every person that I don't know and the people in their life. So with as many people that have passed in the last few years because of it, my approach is basically this. I don't want to be responsible for someone dying.
Right.
If covering my face and having a little bit of discomfort is what needs to be done to save lives, then fine. Because this is bigger than me.
How much of your time in Japan and that the attitude that everyone should have, like how much do you think your time in Japan influenced your train of thought?
Oh, it absolutely did. Yeah. It could, because for me it just made sense to me. Even when they were starting announcing that people need to wear masks, I was like, oh, okay, That's cool. And people are like, well, aren't you upset about it? I'm like, no, why? I'm like, if like I don't like, when we're out in public, if somebody sneezes and they don't cover their mouth, it's the same thing.
Mm.
Or, I had to actually boil it down for someone who was just very like dude broy about it. It's like, I don't understand. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't like, let me break it down to you as if you were a college student. I don't know who you've slept with. I don't know where you've been. I'm going to do everything I can to protect me because you're obviously don't care enough to protect yourself, let alone anybody else in your life. And I feel like that's the approach we need to like approach it as, is that not like, ew, everybody has cooties, but yeah, everybody has cooties because you don't know you don't know who's asymptomatic, who's purely has it on their person and is just carrying it along. So it's just one of those things where it's just like, just think of like, this whole thing is bigger than all of us. No one person is bigger than this situation. Not a single one.
Well, look, it's from a pro wrestling perspective.
Yes.
We have a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
And if everything, fingers crossed, toes crossed, all of that, September is when we're targeting fans cheering,
correct,
whether they're in sections. Do you think, and I've been asked this, and I'm going to ask you this, do you think you'll get emotional when you hear a crowd for the first time in years?
So I watched Tokyo Joshi Pro's Summer Sun Princess on the 9th, same day as Stardom. Watched both shows on the same day. DDT that weekend, they ran 3 shows, a DDT show, a Ganbare Pro show, and Summer Sun Princess. And all 3 allowed vocal cheering and streamers.
Really?
And let me tell you, when every single time one of the girls came out to their theme and the ring announcer said their name and you heard the fans just call their names, and like every single person, every single talent that was in that ring was on the verge of tears.
Wow.
I was like, because I always think back to how, when Kevin and Chris always talked about on commentary where Tanahashi reached out to that little girl that was like calling out to him and like reaching her hand out, and he couldn't express to her that he can't touch her because of the pandemic. I always think about that moment, and I think everyone like, jokes around, oh, Tanahashi's a big crier, but that's the thing, is that there's this concept of gamang in Japanese, which is like self-control and like keeping it, like bottling everything up inside and keeping it all like contained. And that's what everybody that has gone over there has done. They've, not just the wrestlers or the people working there, but every single fan that has bought a ticket, every single person that's gone to a show or helped a show happen, all they've done is hold back and hold back and hold back. That it's like that weekend for New Japan is going to be exceptionally emotional for everybody. Yeah, some of the guys came over here and wrestled in front of a US crowd. But where have they wrestled the bulk of their work for the last 2.5 years? Not here.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be a great day.
Yes.
Karen, I am thrilled.
New Japan thought about my birthday specifically.
Is that right? Is it like, okay?
Birthday's on the 7th, so it's like immediately after those Labor Day weekend shows.
Perfect. That's a birthday present right there. Karen, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. You're traveling. You've got other podcasts, and you took the time to sit and talk with me and have our listeners get a little bit a piece of what makes you tick. And it was super interesting and super fun.
Thank
you.
I
would love to have you back on again.
Anytime. I will make time for the Super J cast, and I promise that I won't like Shanghai it like I do over at Grapple, because apparently at Grapple it's the Karen Peterson show when I'm over there. I will not turn this into the Super K cast, I assure you. We will talk about wrestling.
Maybe a little bit. If I'm there, we probably
maybe
won't.
Just a little bit. It's fine.
Awesome. Anything you want to plug? Anything you got going on in your life that people should know about?
Well, if you do follow me, you're welcome to come along on my Joshi wrestling journey. Every Saturday, I have a column at Post called Dream Slam Weekly, where I recap all the scores and what's hot and going on in the Japanese wrestling scene for the women. Of course, at the end of the month, I'll be doing coverage at Post with the 5-Star Grand Prix opening weekend, both days. Kairi is returning to cause more trouble. And I will also be helping man the G1 coverage desk for Post that weekend on the 31st and on the last weekend right before the finals of the G1 on the 14th. And if you happen to have any interest in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, I have the issue that's coming out right now that has Thunder Rosa on the cover with Jade Cargill, my interview with Hiroshi Tanahashi, my debut interview is there, and then my next interview will be out in August.
Wow. Listen, I'm a big Pro Wrestling Illustrated guy.
Send me a picture if you find it. I don't care who you are. Just, if you find it in the wild, take a picture with it and tag me on it.
I will. All right. I like that. Love it. Hey, again, awesome job by you. I really appreciate you hopping on. Listen, if you like what you heard, redcircle.com, right? Throw us a couple bucks. Why don't you? Buy a t-shirt at prowrestlingtees.com/superjcast. Editor Dan, who does a great job. His face is recovered. I don't know if you heard, Karen.
What happened?
He was in a fucked up accident. Like he fell off his bike and he got knocked out.
Oh my gosh.
Broke bones in his face. And shit.
Glad he's on the mend. Jeez.
Yeah, but the same day he's like, "No worry, mate. I'll get this thing fucking edited." I was like, "What are you insane?
Yourself first, bro."
Right. He's in the hospital tweeting or texting. I was like, "We'll be fine. We'll figure it out."
Nonetheless, it's fine. It'll be there when you get back.
Right. Escape the Box is where you want to go. Spotify and Apple and all where you get your music because they're doing great things. Every day it seems like he comes out with a new song and the band sounds great. So follow him, Lousy Hero 219. We did the t-shirts. We did the 5 Snake review thing on iTunes. Go ahead. I don't give a fuck what you do. Thank you again. It's been my pleasure, and we will see you next time. And hopefully Joel will be back soon. Who knows? He's probably going to stay in the UK and join a punk band. Who knows? All right. For me, Damon, and Karen, thanks for joining us. We'll see you. Bye.